You ever see a grown man's face turn ghost white just from peeking inside an RV? I'll never forget the way that state trooper's hand inched toward his radio, not quite sure if he'd stumbled onto a crime scene or a Hollywood sting. Meanwhile, Susan Moore, the HOA president, who'd been screaming at me in front of the neighbors about illegal parking for nearly half an hour, just froze, mouth hanging open like a karaoke singer who forgot all the words the second the spotlight hit her. Let me tell you, the look on her face right then. That was the moment I knew every petty power play she'd tried, every fake citation, every snide community standard speech was about to come crashing down. And I'd spent weeks getting ready for it. My name's Wayne Reyes. I'm a retired federal investigator. Yeah, one of those people who's seen just about every kind of fraud scam and power trip this country can cook up. After 30 years chasing crooks from tax cheats to traffickers, all I wanted in retirement was to park my modest RV in my own driveway, go fishing, take a few camping trips, and not get hassled by the kind of people who think running an HOA gives them godlike authority. So I bought a house in Sunset Meadows mostly because their bylaws clearly said I could keep a travel trailer in my drive as long as it wasn't too big and I didn't move in full time. I checked twice. Second morning there, Susan Moore knocked on my door with a clipboard. A welcome to the neighborhood, and one of those smiles that never quite makes it to the eyes. Mid-50s, perfectly styled blonde helmet hair, pink blazer, whole look screamed customer service nightmare. She handed me a stack of rules thicker than the paperwork I signed to buy the house. Just want to make sure you're familiar with all our guidelines, Wayne, she said, sweet as lemonade gone sour. I told her nicely that I'd read the HOA rules front to back before closing. My RV fits every restriction you've got, I said. Not too big, not a resident stays in my driveway. That's when her smile wobbled a little. Sometimes written rules don't quite capture the full spirit of our community, she said. Maybe you'd consider a storage lot outside town. I smiled right back, told her I used the RV too much for that. She left with all the warmth of a DMV line in February. 2 days later, first warning citation slapped right under my wipers. Handwritten on HOA letterhead, $50 fine for aesthetic violations. I read the citation 3 times. There was no rule to back it up. But Susan didn't care about rules, just her own version of order. That's when I realized she wasn't protecting property values. She was protecting her personal kingdom. First, I tried diplomacy, calling Susan, asking to talk it out. She showed up late with 2 board members, Jerry Moore, nervous as a squirrel at a dog park, and Hannah Miller, who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Susan led the meeting talking about community harmony and negative impact on property values. I pulled out my copy of the bylaws and pointed at the section that proved my RV was legal. Jerry mumbled something about neighbor concerns. I asked which neighbors. Susan snapped, "We don't reveal complainants." Hannah, bless her, finally spoke up. "Maybe we should review the bylaws again?" Susan shut her down with a glare. "The citation stands," she declared, "and if you keep violating the fines, go up." Let me back up a sec. By now I'd spent my life hunting bigger crooks than Susan, and the one thing they all had in common was believing the rules didn't apply to them. Over the next couple weeks, I racked up 3 more citations, each one more creative than the last. Visual harmony, excessive vehicle prominence, even commercial appearance, because my trailer had a tiny manufacturer's decal. I paid nothing. Instead, I started my own investigation because, old habits die hard. I dug through public records, requested HOA financials supposed to be available to any resident. Susan stalled, said they were under review. When she missed the legal deadline to hand them over, I filed a formal complaint under state law. Then I started hearing stories from neighbors. Susan had been president 4 years, and somehow her brother's landscaping company had raked in over $60,000 in emergency maintenance paid for by HOA dues. Not a single project was competitively bid, even though that was required for anything over $500. And get this, her own property was out of compliance with the very aesthetic standards she tried to use against me. But the real twist came from Hannah Miller. One night she called nervous, asking to meet somewhere private. At a coffee shop, Hannah told me everything Susan had run the HOA like her own fiefdom, handing contracts to friends and family, bullying anyone who got in her way, and keeping meetings secret. She's furious you challenged her authority, Hannah said. She's even talking about having your RV towed. I thanked her and started preparing. I set up security cameras, organized my documentation, and called Jack Jackson, an old buddy from law enforcement, now a state trooper, who'd helped bust a corrupt city council a few years back. Jack told me to keep documenting everything and let him know if Susan made any move involving police. Sure enough, 3 days later, Susan rolled up with a tow truck and 2 cronies, clipboard in hand, strutting like she was about to star in her own reality show. The tow driver looked wary. "Ma'am, this is a civil dispute. I need documentation." Susan went red in the face. "I am the HOA president. I have authority." I calmly replied, "No, you don't. If you tow, that's theft." That's when Susan made her classic mistake. She called the police, gave them a whole speech about being afraid for her safety and community standards. I watched almost amused as she played victim for the dispatcher. 20 minutes later, who shows up? Jack Jackson. Not a coincidence he'd been waiting for this call. Susan ran over, launching into her best performance. Jack listened politely, then turned to me. "Wayne, your side." I laid it out, every bogus citation, every bylaw, every financial irregularity. Jack turned to Susan. "Ma'am, can you show me the bylaw being violated?" Susan fumbled through a new version she'd obviously doctored. Jack asked to see my copy. I brought out the original certified by the county. Jack compared the two, his face getting serious. "These don't match. The original allows RVs under 30 feet. This one's been altered." Susan panicked, blustered about board authority. Jack wasn't having it. "Have you been altering documents?" Susan huffed and puffed about community standards and broad discretionary powers. Jack pressed her. She doubled down, threatened me, then tried to order him off her jurisdiction. Big mistake. Jack's voice got official. "Fraud and falsifying documents is a crime, ma'am. I need your original records and I'll be inspecting that RV." Jack checked my trailer, found everything in compliance. Then he asked to look inside. I let him in. Now here's where the real fun starts, because my RV wasn't just a travel trailer anymore. Over the past weeks, I'd turned it into a mini command center monitors, showing security footage, files of Susan's violations, evidence of her brother's contracts, even secret audio of board members plotting retaliation against residents. Jack's jaw clenched as he watched. He knew exactly what he was seeing, a smoking gun. He came out, looked Susan dead in the eye, and said, "Ma'am, you're under investigation for fraud, embezzlement, falsifying legal documents, and abuse of fiduciary responsibility. You might want to call a lawyer." Susan went so pale I thought she'd pass out. "What? This is a setup." She tried to back to her car. Jack stopped her. "Ma'am, threatening a witness is another crime. Please step out." She complied, shaking, and he read her rights right there in my driveway in front of half the neighborhood. The tow truck guy and Susan's cronies scattered like they'd seen a ghost. Within minutes, neighbors were peeking out of windows, texting, taking photos. Word spread fast. The queen of citations was being arrested for fraud. Hannah showed up wide-eyed. "Wayne, I can't believe it actually happened." Jerry Moore arrived later, ready to spill his guts, desperate not to go down with Susan. He admitted to everything: vote rigging, intimidation, fake meetings. Next morning, the state attorney general's team rolled in, investigators, accountants, you name it. Turns out Susan's antics weren't just local. They were part of a statewide racket. For weeks, I helped them trace the web of kickbacks, fraud, and retaliatory abuse across multiple HOAs. When it finally went to court, The place was packed. Residents from half the county came to watch Susan get sentenced 3 years in prison, 5 on probation, over $200,000 restitution. Her house seized, her brother's company nailed. Other board members prosecuted. The best part: the state passed new laws, mandatory audits, real transparency, criminal penalties for HOA fraud. Sunset Meadows became a model community with Hannah as president and actual fairness in place of Susan's petty tyranny. My RV's still in my driveway, a little sun-faded now, but I smile every time I see it. Folks stop to thank me for standing up. Property values went up, the neighborhood's friendlier, and I get to go camping whenever I want. The state even used my case to train other HOA boards. The irony: Susan's need for control led her right into the trap, her own rules, her own arrogance, her own undoing. So here's the real lesson: bullies bank on your silence, but document everything. Stand your ground. And sometimes the right preparation can turn their petty war into a total defeat. Makes you wonder how many Susans are out there right now just waiting for someone to fight back. Drop your thoughts below. Ever dealt with an HOA tyrant or seen justice like this served? And if you're rooting for resident rights hype, this story, share it with your friends. And let's hear where you're watching from. Because sometimes the only thing standing between a bully and their downfall is one stubborn neighbor with the guts to call their bluff.